Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my full review on this little guy. This is the Pumpkin Spice Lil Native. It is the Rex 45 version of the Spyderco Lil Native, meaning it has Rex 45 blade steel, and it has these burnt orange G10 scales, or as I like to call them, pumpkin spice. Or, on Thanksgiving, because I carried it that day as well, I called them the pumpkin pie scales. I really kind of like this color, and I get a kick out of having it during fall time. I guess now it's technically winter, or is it about to be winter? I don't know. In Southern California, we don't really have proper seasons. But anyways, this has been kind of a fun fall knife for me. I had a Rex 45 Para 3 a couple of years ago now, and it had the same burnt orange G10, same blade steel, and I liked that knife. It's one that I've kind of regretted in a couple of ways letting go of, but I've wanted a Lil Native for a while. And the Para 3 that I have now, that's kind of my forever Para 3, is in Maximet, and that's my favorite blade steel that's offered on the Para 3 for the way that I use that knife. But Rex 45 is fantastic. It is every bit a super steel, and I've been really happy to have this knife. So the Lil Native, to me, is a secondary. It absolutely fits in that category. This is not a primary knife. You're not going to find this knife in my front right pocket. That's where my primary goes. This is just too small to be that. And over the last, it's been more than a week, but probably 2 weeks since I got this, I've carried this a lot. And I've put it in my back pocket just about every single time. Once or twice I put it in like a coin pocket or a fifth pocket. And then I've been carrying around a fanny pack lately to try out. I'll be doing a video on that soon. And I've tucked this in there a few times as well. But as a secondary, what I really wanted to find out, what I talked about a little bit in my first impressions video not too long ago about this, was how well it actually does and whether it's capable of all the things that I expect of a secondary knife. Now, by nature, carrying two knives, I don't need to expect my secondary to be ultra capable, because usually my primary, being the bigger of the two knives, is the one that I expect to tackle any like hard use tasks. But sometimes I'm carrying a really pretty primary that I don't want to do nasty chore work with, and if something comes up that I need to do on the fly, then that means it's on my secondary. So it does have to be fairly capable, and best case for me is to just have two very capable knives on me, just in different sizes. I've got a video on secondary knives, why I carry them, and what some of my preferred ones are. It's been a while since I shot that, so a lot of the ones that I have at the moment are different than what were in that video, but the same principles still apply. I like having a secondary on me. Now, what I found is this knife absolutely is a knife that I trust as a secondary. There's a couple of features about it that make it really good, in my opinion, for that role. And my big kind of hang-up, what made me a little bit nervous about it, nervous is the wrong word, but made me skeptical that it would really live up to being a proper secondary, in my sense of the word, was just the cutting edge length. This knife has a very small blade, and because it also has a forward finger choil, not all that blade is cutting edge. Spyderco does that a lot. It's one of my favorite things about Spydercos, because I like the ergos of a forward finger choil, but cutting edge is just not very big here. Not the smallest I've ever experienced, but cutting edge does make a difference to a certain point, right? Now, what I found is the way that this knife works for me, this cutting edge is plenty for anything that I realistically expect a secondary knife to do. I'll be doing a video soon on my kind of typical EDC knife tasks and what I do with them, kind of showing footage of what's realistic for me, just as kind of a reference point, I suppose. But really, it's mostly opening packages, processing the cardboard for the dumpster, and opening products. So like my daughter's toys, which have a ton of zip ties and little like rubber bands in there and all kinds of crazy stuff. Barbies get packaged in weird ways these days. Maybe they always have, I don't know. But opening toys and packaging for things, unboxing more knives, and then cutting tags off of shirts and around the house things. If I have to do something like a project in the house, if I'm mounting a TV on the wall and something needs to be cut in the packaging, or if I need to scrape something, whatever it is, an EDC knife is just used for all that my everyday type of stuff. So this knife I haven't found is incapable of anything that I just mentioned. I've put it through quite a few zip ties at this point. It did great. It's got a precise enough tip that if I'm opening something delicate where I've got to kind of reach in and make little precise cuts, works great for that. Processing cardboard for the dumpster, which was kind of what I was maybe a little worried about, was that this amount of cutting edge wasn't going to make that very easy. It actually did great for it. The ergos of this knife are really what it has to thank for passing that test, I think. So we're going to talk about this knife kind of in my relatively typical fashion. I'm going to talk about ergos, carry, cutting performance, and action, and we'll see if anything else comes up along the way. But let's start with ergos because I already mentioned how good they are. This knife, for being so tiny, has fantastic ergos, and the forward finger choil is what makes that happen. If it didn't have that forward finger choil, this would not be a 4-finger knife. My pinky would absolutely hang off of here. It just doesn't have anywhere to go. But with that forward finger choil, I get all 4 fingers on here, and it's locked in. The way the grooves are cut and everything, it fills my hand well, and it feels like a much bigger knife than it actually is. So even though there's not very much cutting edge here, I do get a full grip on it. And with that full purchase, it makes it way more capable with the cutting edge that it does have. So the ergos are very, very good in my opinion. It fits my hand well. It's not the most comfortable knife I've ever held, far from it, but I wouldn't call it uncomfortable. And the pocket clip, being a wire pocket clip, is very comfortable in the palm of my hand. It's not bothering me, it's not hot spotty. There's nothing on here that's poking or prodding me in an awkward way. It doesn't feel like it's melted into my hand, but it feels good. So I like the ergos. Let's talk about the carry because I just mentioned the clip. I've said this a bunch of times before, I'll say it again anytime I see it. A deep carry, loop over style clip that doesn't come all the way to the butt end of the knife is stupid, in my opinion. What a deep carry loop over clip should do is be positioned so that it goes all the way to the butt end of the knife. That way, when the knife is inserted into your pocket, all that you see is clip. There's not knife sticking out. That doesn't happen here. When you put this deep carry clip in your pocket, the knife still carries shallow because there's more handle up here. Positioning this clip over here, maybe on a little bit of an angle or something, getting it right to the butt end of the knife would be far superior, in my opinion. That said, I do really like wire pocket clips. This one doesn't leave a ton sticking out of the pocket, so it's not like it's a deal breaker for me. This knife still absolutely carries phenomenally well because it's tiny, it's a very little package, it's pretty lightweight. Internally, these scales even have a pretty good amount of skeletonizing, or liners I should say. I guess it's really just the clip side, because the compression lock side there isn't enough surface area to really mill anything out, but on the clip side there's quite a bit of material removed, so this knife is lightweight, tiny, and therefore very comfortable in the pocket. When I've carried it back pocket, coin pocket, I carried it once in my waistband. It's comfortable pretty much no matter what. So I like this knife to carry. I do wish the pocket clip came all the way to the butt end, but it is what it is. Let's talk action real quick. So action on this guy is what I like out of compression lock Spydercos. It has a hole that I can middle finger flick, and I do so reliably. I haven't ever failed on it. It just works really well. The kind of angle that I'm able to get on it is excellent. For such a small knife, I'm surprised how well this knife fidgets for me. On top of that, compression locks are just one of my favorite lock types in general, because one of the advantages, you keep your fingers out of the blade path, that's all fine and dandy, great, but also just the way that they are to play with. The fact that I can just depress this tab back here and it drops. I like drop shutty knives, and the fact that Spydercos on washers with a compression lock have no blade play. If they're dialed in right, you get it right, and you can still drop them shut, is great to me. I really like that. This one does have a little bit of a nub back here, kind of like the Shaman. A lot of people complain about that on the Shaman. If you'll see right there, just kind of the tang of the blade. There's a nub that comes right into where the compression lock is. So if your finger is right there, when you go to close the blade, it does kind of bounce off of your fingertip with that nub. That's not a sharp edge, and this blade isn't super heavy. That's never bothered me. It's not like hurting my finger. And I can also just time it right to get my finger out of the way, and it's fine. So if the Shaman bothers you in that way, then this may also bother you, but even on the Shaman, that doesn't bother me. It's just something to be aware of for me, to pull my finger out of the way by the time the blade is about done closing, or I'm going to get a little bump. It's like, it's not a big deal. So, action is very good. It's consistent with the Para 3 and the PM2 and the Shaman. It's just smaller and lighter, and so it feels a little different in that way, but the mechanics are the same. Now, let's talk about cutting performance, which I've already talked about. It's very, very good. For this amount of cutting edge, the key to its success really just has to be the ergos and how capable it feels in hand, because it fills the hand well. If this knife didn't fill the hand well and you had this much cutting edge, I wouldn't trust it to be a solid secondary knife to trust in my pocket. But because I do get such a good purchase on it, and because we've got a good Spyderco blade with a full flat grind in an amazing steel, this one happens to be wearing an edge that was put on it by one of the previous owners, so it's not the factory edge, but it's very sharp. It's just excellent. It's a really good cutter. I love using full flat grind knives for the type of things I do with EDC knives. I like full flat grinds in general, but when I'm processing cardboard for the dumpster, which I've done a lot with this, we've been getting an obscene amount of packages with it being the holidays. We live in a complex with a few units, and so I always break down the cardboard so that I'm not an a-hole who's filling up the dumpster with like full boxes. I strip them out, right? And so when I'm processing a few boxes at a time, 4 or 5 large boxes, and I'm making a bunch of cuts through material, a full flat grind just works really well for that type of task. Rex 45 holds its edge really, really well. The base steel on these is S30V. Even that is going to be fine. So the Lil Native, for me, and that being kind of like the hardest task that is typical of my EDC knives, I guess hard in one way. Sturdy zip ties are a different kind of hard on knives, but either way, it's done great for both. I've popped plenty of zip ties, and I've had no edge deformation. I've done a bunch of cardboard. I did strop this knife once after I'd done an exceptional amount of cardboard, and I was able to strop it right back with, it's a River's Edge cutlery strop. I think it's got black compound on it. Anyways, I need to get better about I need to amass a better collection of strops, I should say, because I really only have that one, and I had one with green compound, but I can't find it. So I'm probably going to get one of their strop bats or something soon. But anyways, I've stropped this knife once, and it's absolutely still shaving sharp. It's holding its edge really well. Rex 45 is a great steel. The closest comparison to it, from what I've been told, I'm not a metallurgist and I'm not a steel tester or anything like that, but some people who I trust who do those things have said it's really, really similar to M4 in terms of its properties, but that it has a little bit greater edge stability. So it can be taken a little bit thinner and still be trusted, but in terms of its edge retention and toughness and all that, it's going to be pretty much on par with M4. And M4 is absolutely a super steel as well, and I love M4. So I like Rex 45. It's every bit a super steel in my book. So the Lil Native is a great knife. I really, really enjoy it. I'm probably going to be doing a comparison between it and the Para 3 because I think it's worth doing. I think a lot of people might see them as overlapping quite a bit. They might only want to justify having one. I think they're pretty different. I've got no problem owning both, and I think I'll talk about those differences in that video, but I do see the overlap. They're both small Spydercos that a lot of people would consider a secondary or a small EDC, and so I think that'll be fun to do. So that'll be coming soon, but in the meantime, I absolutely really like the Lil Native. I have no problem recommending it to people who want a good small knife. It's a knife that I trust. Its construction is solid. It is consistent with the Golden Colorado Spyderco. I've never personally had a bad one, and this one feels every bit like a PM2 or a Para 3 or a Native, but it's got a compression lock. And so I like that. I wish that they would make a Native with a compression lock. That would be even closer to being a Para 3, but there's already quite a few options in that category for Spyderco, so is what it is. But I really like this knife. It's a good one. This is the Pumpkin Spice Lil Native in Rex 45, and that'll be my full review on it. So thanks for watching, guys.